We are not expected to see William Barr today, as outside witnesses will testify on the nominee for Attorney General's behalf. Barr, who is poised to assume control of the Russia investigation, in front of top lawmakers Tuesday, committed to protect the special counsel's inquiry. But he also suggested Robert Mueller's report itself might not be made public. The Senate Judiciary Committee on the hunt for answers.
Do you believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt against anybody?
I don't believe Mr. Mueller would be involved in a witch hunt.
Getting Attorney General nominee William Barr's take on President Trump's attacks on the Russia investigation.
The witch hunt that's been going on forever.
This is a witch hunt.
Barr repeatedly defending the man leading the inquiry, his friend Bob Mueller.
And I said Bob is a straight shooter and should be dealt with as such.
Grilled about his past criticism of the Russia investigation, an unsolicited memo he shared with the president's lawyers last year, Barr refused to say whether he would recuse himself from the inquiry, even if career Justice Department ethics officials recommend it.
Under what scenario would you not follow their recommendation?
If I disagreed with it.
And what would the basis of that disagreement be?
I came to a different judgment.
Barr also pressed what he would do if President Trump ordered him to fire Mueller.
Assuming there was no good cause?
Assuming no good cause.
I would not carry out that instruction.
And he insisted the president would be crossing a red line if he interfered with an investigation for personal reasons.
If a president attempts to intervene in a matter that he has a stake in to protect himself, that should first be looked at as a breach of his constitutional duties.
Would he release the Mueller report in full? Barr pledged to be as transparent as legally allowed.
I don't know what at the end of the day, what will be releasable. I don't know what Bob Mueller is writing.
The former AG back for another stint, asserting his own independence.
I will not be bullied into doing anything I think is wrong by anybody, whether it be editorial boards or Congress or the president.
And later offering his own views of the president's use of the term witch hunt.
I think it's understandable that if someone felt they were falsely accused, they would view an investigation as something like a witch hunt, where someone like you or me who doesn't know the facts might not use that term.
Top Democrats are raising questions about the nominee.
He was clearly testifying for an audience of one, that person being Donald Trump.
The White House says President Trump did watch some of his nominees' hearing. When pressed on differences between Barr and President Trump's views of the Russia inquiry, the press secretary here, Sarah Sanders, simply said Barr is a very honorable man doing what he believes and that the president respects that. Barr could be sworn in by mid-February.